And they're like,
We haven't seen them in a while, have we?
Hey folks, it is October the 26th. Thank you, Hunter, for bringing us down a little. And today we are going to discuss an introduction to what the Crusades were and what they're about. When we come back tomorrow, we're going to discuss the First Crusade, which is known as the one successful crusade. Following that, you have some with varying degrees of success, but pretty much they were all trying to catch up to the gains from the first one. And so I'll go ahead and show you the images for the day. So what are the problems that people have when they study Western history or European history, especially before the modern era, well, even in the modern era, is all of the shifting lines of the map. So this is a map of after the Crusades. This is Europe 1360. And so here we have it's pretty much kind of like today in many ways. So you have the Kingdom of Castile here. This is eventually in Aragon. This is going to become Spain. You have Portugal. You have France, which is still not necessarily unified, if you can see here. Germany, of course, is still not a nation. So you have the separate kingdoms that make up the Holy Roman Empire. You have Hungary, like Eastern Europe. Here, Italy is still disunified. You have the Papal States. You have the Kingdom of Naples, Kingdom of Sicily. So it's all even a lot of Italy is actually part of the Holy Roman Empire. So they're not even free. Of course, you have England, Scotland are still separate. Ireland at this time, some of it was we're going to see is going to be conquered by the English. The Ottoman Empire will take in Constantinople. It'll be no more. It'll be become Istanbul. And you're going to see Eastern Europe is going to become kind of like what we would call a buffer zone between Christendom and Islam. And of course, we have North Africa and all that, which these are all going to become part of the Ottoman Empire. But in some ways, they're going to have some separation, kind of like Egypt in particular. So the Crusades are going to help divvy all that up and kickstart the Renaissance. So, pilgrimage. So we talked about how in Christianity at this time, things like relics and different beneficial things that the church could offer its parishioners called the sacraments were something that people took very seriously in medieval times. Pilgrimage is going to be one of those things. And so a lot of people, now remember we talked about in Islam, you're required to try to make a pilgrimage at least once in your life to Mecca. So pilgrimage is something that's very important to people in monotheistic religions like Abrahamic religions. Christians took it as important as well. Not quite to that degree, but still people would give up their life savings to go on a trip to the Holy Land. This is during a time when people usually didn't travel much further than 5 miles outside of the place they were born. So this was like a great big deal to a lot of people in Europe. I mean, they weren't going to go to Hawaii. So here we have, this is known as the birthplace of Jesus. So when they were talking about a manger in ancient times, mangers were usually caves. And so the manger, they say that Jesus was born in was actually a little cave where people would let their animals stay overnight. And they believe it's on this spot is where Jesus was born. And of course, there's a church built around it. You can still go there today. Of course, a lot of these churches we have up today, they might be ancient and parts of them might be ancient, but of course they've had to be refurbished and rebuilt. Some of them have been demolished and had to be built back up and stuff like that. It took a long time. It took lifetimes to build like Notre Dame, right? But the thing is that cathedrals and places like this have been destroyed and rebuilt over and over again. So that's one thing. But that shows a lot to do with how people find something important. So important, even if it's demolished, they want to bring it back. Yes?
I can't remember. Wasn't it this year or last year that Notre Dame burned?
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, because I remember I was still teaching in the other campus when it happened, so I remember that.
What did it even happen?
Well, okay. So
Vacuum.
there was apparently they were kind of like refurbishing some of the insides. There was like construction scaffolding and stuff like that on the inside, and apparently there was an electrical problem with the equipment they were using. Nobody was in the building except for a couple of priests, and a place spark caught on fire. Some people, like apparently it was like a story. A couple witnesses said they saw some people go inside of it and run out, but I don't know if it's true or not. But in any case, it did burn in. So they were, however, able to go in, and the priests were able to save some of the special items out of there, and do with art, relics, and stuff like that. So, of course, many of these are, of course, ancient items. So that was nice. Some of the stuff was saved. All right, so pilgrims wanted to go see where Jesus was born. Another is Golgotha. This is where the hill said where Christ was crucified with the two thieves. And so people wanted to go make the pilgrimage there. Of course, now there's like some fencing and stuff. There's a lot of archaeological sites around Jerusalem. Like they have some of the world's top archaeologists there excavating various sites, trying to find not just like ancient Jewish ruins and stuff, but even like prehistoric people's relics and artifacts and things like that too. So lots and lots of archaeology. This is the church. You see it's domed. It's Byzantine built of the Holy Sepulchre or Sepulchre. This is supposed to be built over the cave where Jesus was buried after his crucifixion. It's got a big dome over it. A lot of these churches, multiple denominations will run it. So they're like, you have it on Thursday, you have it on Friday, we have it on Saturday. But a lot of them are actually run by Greek Orthodox, if they're run by one. So here there's like a separate building over the top of the entrance to the cave, which is sealed up. So you can't go inside of it, but you can go see the slab that's over it. So you got this big dome over it. And then over that, you have this mini building, which is almost kind of like an altar type of thing over it. So pilgrims wanted to go see this. This is also an ancient structure. And especially for medieval people, this was like, especially the ones who came from places where maybe not all of them even had stone castles. To see stone buildings and stuff like this, and arches and all that must have been rather amazing, especially to see like the decoration and the gilding compared to what they might have back in, say, France. The Crusades is going to be essentially it's going to be two different kinds of military styles clashing. So you're going to have the Turks, the Seljuk Turks, who are going to, of course, be acclimated for their environment. They use a lot of cavalry, which is, of course, mounted fighting, but their horses are smaller and faster. Turks are less armored, but their armor was still effective because it could be layers of cloth. And as we might know today, layers of good cloth can provide pretty good protection against a lot of bludgeoning damage and things like that. The knights tended to bring their form of warfare with them with heavy armor, heavy, powerful horses, though a bit slower. And of course, the cavalry charge, as they were known for having with their lances, to be very good shock cavalry. And of course, both sides brought, of course, their infantry and their other forms of warfare. The Turks, which we've seen some of their relatives before, they come from the east, and then they're going to move in and they're going to conquer a lot of the Islamic areas, but then they're going to convert and control the areas. They're going to be very zealous Muslims, but they're not going to be as welcoming to pilgrims as the Arabic Muslims were. Because under the Caliphates, they were very tolerant of Christian pilgrims. They would keep the roads safe from bandits, and they didn't charge high taxes for pilgrims coming over. When the Turks took over, they charged very high taxes for the pilgrims, and sometimes they were very hostile to pilgrims coming over. And so this got Europeans very, very mad. Now, this doesn't start the Crusades, however, but it's going to build up a lot of the background where a lot of the different kingdoms in Christianity are going to start getting very upset that they're not able to go see the Holy Land that they've been able to see for hundreds and hundreds of years before all of this happened. And they're going to have restricted access. Many of them are going to be turned away. So this is going to make people pretty mad. So, and of course, here's their conquest moving through. So, heartland of the Seljuks, they come from the east. Now, the Russian steppe. Of course, we have a lot of horseback warriors coming. Cossacks later on. Have, of course, Genghis Khan. Remember, we just talked about a whole bunch of these people coming in. And of course, the Persians will have had a similar background back in the day of the ancient Greeks. So it's a very effective form of fighting. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our terms to the board. So, starting off with this one, so what exactly were the Crusades? What's the word crusade mean? What's crux mean? Yeah, so crux is cross. So essentially, what it kind of really means is like, see, to bear your cross, which is a very Christian phrase, which can have a lot of meaning, like carrying on with like infirmity or hardship and things like that. Well, if you remember, Islam had something kind of like this too. We were talking about jihad. They were talking about a jihad could be a holy war, but it could also mean a personal struggle. And so, see, Christians were very familiar with having something like this as well with the crusade. And so, what exactly did the Crusaders want? Like, what was the whole point of the crusade? Yeah, essentially to gain the Holy Land. It's for Christianity. So here's the deal. We're going to see, and when you read Dante's Inferno, pay attention to like what level of hell and what kind of punishments merited for Muhammad, because Dante puts him there, and he puts him in a place where it's for heretics, because ancient Christians believed that Islam was not a separate religion. They believed that it was a heresy of Christianity, because Islam talked about Christ, but they talked about him in a non-divine way. They talked about God, but they defined God in a different way. So they saw this as a way to bring the Holy Land back from from heretics, essentially. So they saw this as trying to root out people who went astray. That's the way they were looking at it. So they weren't looking at it as a clash between two separate religions. All right. So early clashes with Islam. So the First Crusade is not going to be the first time that we have this battle between Christendom and Islam. What were the two earlier things we've talked about before? Remember Charles Martel? So prior to the First Crusade, Christian princes Muslim armies. So Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer, he's the grandfather of Charlemagne. He's going to, if you remember, way back when in the 700s, he fought Moorish invaders in what battle?
Great scheme.
Oh man,
We're pretty dumb.
y'all aren't dumb. What I think it is I think y'all are good about getting concepts. Your testing tells me that you're able to understand the big picture of things, but what we're missing is details. And I'm not really a detail person, but you have to have a bit of detail or things don't make sense. So, if you remember the Battle of Tours, yeah, the Battle of Tours. So yeah, and this is this was important because this prevented the Moors from taking over much of the rest of Europe and kept much of it Christian. Now, here's another question. Now, all right, so stepping back, thinking all the way back to 8th grade and 7th grade history. When Spain came to the Americas, their conquistadors had fought to reclaim Spain. And what was that fight called? The Reconquista. Yeah, so, yeah. And the Reconquista.
There's like one dude I remember that lived in Vodka from that's like with
Cabeza de Vaca?
Yeah.
You know what? No, not Cabeza de Vaca was he wasn't a conquistador. He was like a trained doctor. He's gonna be captured. He got captured and enslaved by Carrancoa, and then he wound up they made him into like a medicine man, and he's gonna actually walk from like Galveston area all the way down to like Mexico City, gathering up like thousands of Indians behind him, and he's gonna preach to them. And then when they get there, then the conquistadors are gonna enslave all those poor Indians. It's like, oh no, I brought them here to be subjects of the king, and they can start living like us. And they made him into slaves. So he was very unhappy about that. But he did go to Spain and he talked about human rights for Indians. He's like, guess what? Indians are human. Because they didn't believe, some people didn't believe Indians were qualified as humans back then. So he was one of the people who argued for them. So the Reconquista is going on. So you have these Christian princes who are like, hey, we're trying to get our homes back. You had the Battle of Tours. So you've had battles before all of this. But now we're going to see that instead of being on kind of like the defense, they're going to go on the offense. So pilgrimages. So why were pilgrimages important according to your reading?
they would go to like Jerusalem, the Holy Land, because like they call it connection land.
Yes.
The what are they called? The caliphs were like, oh, that's okay because it's kind of like the same God, but yeah, you can come here. And then the Seljuk Turks are like, we want this land,
Mm-hmm.
and they fought the caliphs, even though the Turks adopted Islam, they were like Archer.
Yeah, so they're protected by the Fatimids or the caliphs. But later, the Turks, there's going to be more than one Turk, we're just going to put Turks, turn them away. So, and when we come back tomorrow, we're going to talk about that tipping point that's just going to set it all off. So this is like the build up. And this often happens with wars. People will get mad against one another, especially countries. You'll see it like it'll be like in the press. This country's right ahead in bad stories with other country. The politicians aren't getting along. Everybody knows something's going to happen to them. Tipping point, and it starts. So the crusade motives. So when we're talking about the Crusaders, they go there for reasons. So what are some reasons why Crusaders go down there? Alondra, what's a reason why a Crusader would go down there?
Where?
Huh? Where are we? Because we can't have so we can answer everything.
Wait, why? Why was there like?
Why would the Crusader want to go risk their lives, like in like desert area, very far from home, where they got like the grape fields and the vineyards and all stuff?
They like oil. They had oil like or something.
Yeah. Remember that was like the big pastime for a European noble. So yeah, European nobles had a warlike culture. They were itching for a fight. And remember that the popes, various popes in the church have been telling them, y'all, it's not very Christian for Christians to kill Christians, right? And so they've been hearing this for a long time. And they're like, wow, finally, we have somebody who's not a Christian. And we can go ahead and fight them instead. So this is like what they do. And when you think about like a knight's life or a noble's life, the whole life is about training for warfare. And if you're training constantly for warfare, guess what? That's what you want to do. That would be like being trained to be a writer your whole life, but never being allowed to author a book or write an article. Like, what's the point? So, yeah, so they're like itching for it. All right, that was good. Thank you. Now, hey, Edwin, what's another reason why they might want to go do Mortal Kombat, religious style?
To get their land back.
Okay. Get their land back? Not their land. Somebody else's. Okay. But yeah, yes. So wanted control of the Holy Land. I think we already hinted at that. Okay. All right. That's another reason. We got reasons. There's another reason. Think about metaphysical reasons, something that's beyond this life. Yes, sir.
They believe that Muslims were heresy, and they were.
Yes. Yes. Wanted to smash the heretics. Okay, but what about another metaphysical reason? So, Hunter, what did the church promise if you went on a crusade? Protection from what?
Everyone else.
Okay, so yeah, the church offered protection for the families. Your family. But what about your soul, Hunter? What did they offer?
You'll go to heaven.
Yeah, well, kind of, yeah. Yeah, they at least promised and forgiveness of sins and time out of purgatory, indulgences. And we're going to talk more about indulgences later whenever we talk about Martin Luther. But yeah, remember that an indulgence is pretty much where the church says you have, here's how it works. So the church claimed authority that through Christ, they had the authority to forgive sins, but also just because you were forgiven didn't mean you were necessarily out of punishment, because the forgiveness would prevent you from going to hell. But kind of like the analogy is, you can apologize for breaking somebody's vase and they'll forgive you, but you still have to
Then you're gonna fix
get a new, then you got to fix the vase. So purgatory was like fixing the vase. So they're like saying, hey, we'll forgive you, but you still got to fix the vase in purgatory. But if you go on a crusade, you don't have to do that either. You get an indulgence. But later on, we're going to see the church is going to sell indulgences, and that's what's going to really make Martin Luther really, really mad. So, but for now, nobody's having a problem with it yet. Got the Crusades going on. Big stuff, big stuff. So, before we do anything else, I'm going to look up what chapters we're going to quiz over on Thursday, because I want you to know what we're going to do before we do it.
Why unless you make a quiz?
Because I ask questions of like, hey, anybody remember the Battle of Tours? And everybody's like, I never heard that before. So that's why you need a quiz. So you can try to memorize something.
I like the place like this.
No, what's number one? Car.
Right, which chapter?
Automobile, vehicle.
No.
Interesting.
I
get what's there.
had the
Alright.
vroom machine. The vroom machine.
Hey kids, all right, so here's the sets.
I met one of your cousins.
You are going to be quizzed over these 34 terms. Chapters 40 through 43, 44 through 48, and 49 through 53. So here's the thing though. We didn't talk about a lot of these. I skipped some of these chapters. So it's going to be up to you to like get in there and make sure that you know these terms. But we did go over some of them. Yes, you may. But this stuff, oh yeah, believe me, we went over it. So remember, chapters 40 through 53, it's in E. Whitener 80. If you get lost looking for it in Quizlet, simply go to Google Classroom. It's near the bottom of the classroom. You'll find the link. And I'm going to print them out for you or post them if you're a virtual student. I'll post your quiz for you, and we'll get it all done. It'll be goody gumdrops. We're not going to spend much time Wednesday reviewing this. I'd rather go through content, but we can study it just a little bit. But Thursday.
I'll say me.
All right, kids, I'll talk to you later. We're going to talk about the First Crusade.
The alliteration. Yeah. We're talking about David.